Thursday morning. Dale died at 6:44 a.m. The paramedics said it was fast. They said he probably didn't feel much. They said things like that, I think, because they don't know what else to say. I sat in the hospital waiting room for 2 hours after they told me, not because I needed to be there, but because I did not know where else to go. And then I remembered his phone. He had left it on the nightstand. I needed to call his brother. I picked it up. I opened it. And there, not because I was looking, not because I had ever had reason to look, but because the screen was open on the last app he had used before his heart stopped, was a message thread. A name I knew, a neighbor, a woman who had waved at me from her driveway for 11 years. I read 3 lines. 3 lines was all I needed. I put the phone in my purse. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table, and I thought about the obituary I was going to have to write. My name is June Calloway. I am 52 years old, and I wrote the most honest obituary this town has ever seen. My name is June Calloway. I am 52 years old. I have lived in Millbrook, Ohio for 27 years. Millbrook is a small town, the kind that has one stoplight and a hardware store that has been run by the same family for 3 generations, and a diner where everyone knows your name and your order and, eventually, your business. I came here at 25 when Dale got a job at the county engineer's office. I came as someone from Columbus, someone who had always been a city person, someone who did not expect to stay. I stayed. You stay in Millbrook when you put down roots, and roots in small towns go deep and sideways in a way that city roots don't. I taught 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary for 22 years. I know every family. I was at their kids' baptisms and their parents' funerals, and the kind of in-between moments that add up to knowing someone. I knew Patrice Weld for 11 years. She moved onto our street in 2013. A divorce, I understood. Something that had happened before she arrived, that had brought her to Millbrook to start over closer to her sister. She was 44 at the time. She had short, dark hair and a terracotta pot garden on her front porch that I had admired more than once. Dale had helped her move some furniture in the first week. That's the kind of neighbor we were. That's the kind of man I thought he was. Dale Calloway was 54 years old when he died. He had been a county engineer for 29 years, the kind of career that is unglamorous and essential, the person who makes sure roads drain correctly and bridges stay up and the systems nobody thinks about continue to work. He was good at it. He took it seriously in the specific way of someone who understands that competent infrastructure is what keeps people safe. He was a deacon at our church. He coached Little League for 6 years when our son was young. He fixed things around the house without being asked. He was, from the outside, from the inside I had believed, a steady and decent man. I had been married to him for 28 years. I had believed I knew him. I did not know about Patrice. Not one day, not 1 hour, not one moment in 11 years had I suspected Patrice Weld across the street. I had waved at her from my driveway. She had waved back. I had brought her soup when she had the flu 4 winters ago. She had brought us tomatoes from her garden in the summer. She had been at my daughter's baby shower 3 years ago. At my daughter's baby shower. I thought about that, sitting at the kitchen table on the Thursday morning Dale died, with his phone in my purse. She had sat at my table. She had held my daughter's hands and said she was so happy for her. And she had been sleeping with my husband. 11 years. The tomatoes, the soup, the baby shower. 11 years. I read the phone properly that afternoon, not the 3 lines I had seen in the waiting room. All of it, as much of it as existed in the thread, which was based on what was visible, at least 4 years of messages. The content of what I read I will not reproduce here. What I will tell you is the shape of it. Regular contact,
Not occasional, regular, the specific rhythm of two people who have been in each other's lives so long that the communication had become routine, daily sometimes, multiple times a day sometimes, references to specific dates, specific events in my own life, my daughter's wedding, a trip Dale and I had taken to see his parents in Florida, my retirement from teaching, that told me Patrice had been present in the edges of all of it, watching, part of a parallel story that had been running alongside mine for years. References, in the earlier messages that I could see, to 11 years. 11 years, she had written in one message from some time in the spring. I've been loving you for 11 years. I'm tired of being a secret. He had written back, I know, I'm sorry, give me time. Time. He had been asking for time for 11 years, and then he had run out of it. At 6:44 on a Thursday morning, his heart had stopped, and the secret had become mine to carry or mine to put down. I chose to put it down.
I called my daughter, Ray, at 4 in the afternoon. She drove from Columbus. She arrived by 7. She came through the door and she held me and I let her hold me, and I said, I need to tell you something, and I need you to sit down first. She sat down. I told her. She looked at her father's phone for a long time, then she put it on the table. She said, What do you want to do? I had been thinking about this since the morning. I want to write the obituary, I said. Mom, I mean, an honest one, I said, a true one. Ray looked at me. She is 31. She has my stubbornness and her father's precision, which is a combination that has made her very good at her job and very clear-eyed about most things. She looked at me for a long time. Tell me what you're thinking, she said. I told her. She listened to all of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Are you sure? No, I said, but I'm going to do it anyway. She thought about it. Okay, she said, then let me help you. We sat at the kitchen table until midnight, Ray with her laptop, me with a yellow legal pad, the kind I had always used for lesson plans, now being used for something else entirely. We wrote for 3 hours. Not in anger, I want to be clear about that, not in the hot, destructive anger that makes people do things they regret, in something colder and more deliberate, in the specific clarity of a woman who has spent 28 years being honest, and who has decided honesty is what she owes to the people of this town who will come to a funeral and read an obituary and believe they are being told the truth. They were going to be told the truth. The question was only how. At midnight, Ray read it back to me. I listened to every word, and I said, Send it. The obituary ran in the Millbrook Gazette on Saturday morning. I want to tell you what it said. Not all of it. Some of it is ordinary, the standard architecture of an obituary, the dates and the survivors and the professional history. Dale had been an engineer for 29 years and a deacon and a Little League coach, and these things were true and they were in the obituary. But after the standard paragraphs, where most obituaries end with something like, he will be deeply missed by all who knew him, this one was different. It said, Dale Calloway is also survived by a relationship he maintained with a neighbor for 11 years, a fact his wife of 28 years learned only upon his death. June Calloway asks that anyone who knew of this arrangement and chose not to tell her please reflect on what their silence cost her and everyone else in their community who deserved the truth. And then, after the service information, in lieu of flowers, June asks that you bring only your honest self. She has had enough of the other kind. I had written that last line at 11:45 at night. Ray laughed, a startled, genuine laugh. Mom, she said. Too much? I said. She thought about it. No, she said. Actually, no. It ran as written. The calls started Saturday morning. My sister first,
then my closest friend from teaching, Sandra, who had known Dale for 22 years, and who called with the specific, careful voice of someone who is trying to figure out what the correct response is to something that has no correct response. "June," she said. "I know," I said. "You put it in the paper," she said. "I did," I said. "The whole town." "Good," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay?" she said. "I will be. Right now I am angry, and I have decided to do something with the anger that is at least honest." "What did she do?" Sandra said, "when she saw it?" "I don't know yet. I haven't heard from her." I had not heard from Patrice. I did not expect to. There was nothing she could say. The calls kept coming through the day. Church members, neighbors, parents of former students, the specific social network of a woman who has lived in a small town for 27 years. The responses were what I expected from people who live in a place like Millbrook, a mixture of shock and support, and the specific uncomfortable silence of people who are processing something they did not expect to be processing at a condolence call. 2 calls were different. 2 people, in the course of Saturday, said to me, in almost the same words, "June, I heard things over the years. I didn't know if they were true, and I didn't know how to. I'm sorry I didn't tell you." I thanked them. I meant it. I was not angry at people who had heard rumors and not known what to do with them. I was angry at one person, and that person had not called.
The funeral was Monday. Millbrook Baptist Church, the same church where Dale had been a deacon, where I had sat every Sunday for 27 years, where our daughter had been baptized and our son had been confirmed, and where, apparently, my husband had performed the specific moral architecture of a man who presents himself as upstanding in the exact space where his community has agreed to uphold standards of decency. I had asked Pastor Greg if he was comfortable proceeding, given the obituary. He had said, after a long pause, "June, it's your husband's funeral. I'll be there." I had asked Ray and our son Elliot to tell people in the days before the service that Patrice Weld might be in attendance, not to warn them away from her, to prepare them for what they would see. Because I had, on Friday evening, sent Patrice a message from Dale's phone, not pretending to be Dale, that would have been dishonest, and I had committed to honesty, from Dale's phone, signed with my name. I said, "The funeral is Monday at 10. I think you should come." She had not responded, but I believed she would come, because Patrice Weld had loved my husband for 11 years in secret, and the secret was gone, and I believe, that she needed to be there, that whatever she had felt for him, however wrong the shape it had taken, it had been real, and real grief requires presence. I was right. She was in the 3rd pew from the back. I saw her when I walked in. She saw me see her. She did not leave. The service was a service. Pastor Greg spoke about Dale's community work, his professional life, his family. He navigated the specific pastoral challenge of eulogizing a man whose obituary had appeared in the local paper 48 hours before with a paragraph about his infidelity. He did not reference the obituary directly. He did not need to. Every person in that church had read it. I sat in the front pew with Ray on my right and Elliot on my left, and their families around them, and I was aware with a specific, calm awareness of Patrice in the 3rd row from the back. She was wearing black. Her hair was cut short, the same as always. She was alone. I had thought, before the service, about what I felt about her being there. Not the anger. I had worked with the anger, had converted it into the obituary and the message and the specific decision to let the truth be public. What I felt, seeing her, was something more complicated than anger. She had loved him.
Whether I wanted to believe that or not, the 11 years of messages told me she had loved him. She had also, for 11 years, sat in my driveway and waved and brought tomatoes and attended my daughter's baby shower and known something that was mine to know and chosen not to tell me. Both things were true. After the graveside service, as people were moving toward their cars, I walked to where she was standing. She saw me coming. She did not run. I will give her that.
I stood in front of her. The Ohio November around us, cold, gray, the specific flat Midwestern sky that has always made me think of honesty for some reason, of the way this part of the country does not hide behind landscape. "Patrice?" I said. "June," she said. Her voice was... I had expected something. Defiance or guilt or the specific performed remorse of someone who has been caught. What I heard was neither. She sounded exhausted, the specific exhaustion of someone who has been carrying something for a long time. "Why did you come?" I said. She thought about it. "I loved him," she said. "I know that doesn't mean anything to you. I know what I did, but I loved him and he's gone, and I needed to be somewhere that acknowledged he existed." I looked at her for a long time. "He existed to me too," I said, "for 28 years, and I have had to relearn who he was in 3 days." She looked at the ground. "I know," she said. "Are you going to leave Millbrook?" I said. She looked up. "I don't know," she said. "I think you should," I said. "Not because I'm asking you to, but because staying, after the obituary, after today, I don't think staying is possible for you here anymore." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I know," she said. I turned around. I walked back to my daughter. Patrice left Millbrook in December, 6 weeks after the funeral. I know this because Sandra told me. Sandra, who lives 2 streets over from Patrice, who had watched a moving truck on a Wednesday morning and called me that afternoon. "She's gone," Sandra said. "Okay," I said. "How do you feel about that?" I thought about it honestly. "Relieved," I said. Not because I wanted her gone, exactly, but because seeing her car in the driveway while I was processing all of this, it was a specific kind of weight. "What about the house?" Sandra asked. "Are you going to stay?" I had been thinking about this. The house on Elm Street, 24 years in it. The kitchen where I had written the obituary, the driveway where Patrice and I had waved at each other for 11 years, the specific geography of a life that now had a different layer in it than I had understood. "I don't know yet," I said. "I'm not making any big decisions for a while." Sandra was quiet for a moment. "June," Sandra said. "The obituary. The whole town is still talking about it." "I know," I said. "Most people think you were right to do it. I know that too. But some people think—" "Sandra," I said, "I am 52 years old. I taught 4th grade for 22 years. I have been on every committee and every board and at every event in this town for a quarter century. I have spent my entire adult life being what this community expected me to be. I wrote 1 honest paragraph in a newspaper. I am comfortable with the people who think I went too far." She was quiet. Then she laughed. "Fair enough," she said.
The headstone. I have to tell you about the headstone. This is the part that when I tell this story, people react to most strongly, more than the obituary, more than inviting Patrice to the funeral. The headstone. I had decided on the obituary quickly, that same Thursday night with Ray at the kitchen table. The headstone took longer. I sat with it for 2 weeks, not because I was uncertain about what I wanted to say, because I understood that a headstone is permanent in a way that a newspaper is not. A headstone is there as long as the stone is standing, long after I am gone, long after Ray is gone, long after anyone who was alive on Thursday Dale died has passed. A headstone is the last word. I wanted the last word to be true. The stone reads, Dale Arthur Calloway, 1970 to 2024. Husband, father, engineer. He kept many things. The truth was not among them. His wife knew who he was. She buried him anyway. I had written 8 versions. That was the one I kept coming back to. His wife knew who he was. She buried him anyway. Because that is the truth. I knew, by the time I chose the stone, exactly who he had been, and I buried him in the church cemetery of the town where he had lived for 27 years, with a service conducted by the pastor of the church where he had been a deacon, surrounded by the community that had known him. I buried him with everything a man is owed. I simply made sure the stone said what was true. The response to the headstone was different from the response to the obituary. The obituary was a news event. People read it, called me, processed it in the specific, fast way of community response. The headstone was something else. It was slow, gradual. People went to the cemetery, as people do in a town like Millbrook, and they saw it. And the seeing of it, standing in front of a piece of granite, was a different experience than reading words in a paper. Several people told me, over the months that followed, that they had stood in front of the stone for a long time. One of them was a woman whose own husband had died the previous year, who I had consoled at his funeral, who came to my door in one afternoon in February with a casserole and said, "I think my husband had someone too. I'm not sure, but the stone, reading your stone, made me decide I needed to know." I do not know if she found out. We have not talked about it since, but I have thought about her, about the specific thing a clear, honest piece of stone can do for a person who is standing in front of it. Give permission, to know, to decide, to stop performing the version of a marriage that is expected of you and look at what is actually true. Pastor Greg came to see me in January. He sat at my kitchen table. He said, "June, I want to talk about the stone." "Okay," I said. "I've been praying about it," he said, "about what the right response to it is, from a pastoral standpoint, from a community standpoint." "And?" I said. He thought for a moment. "I keep coming back to the same place," he said. "Whatever I think about the form of it, the newspaper, the stone, what you did was tell the truth. And I cannot find in anything I believe a reason why that is wrong." I looked at him. "Thank you, Greg," I said. "Don't thank me," he said. "I'm still working through some of it, but that's where I am."
I found Patrice's address in January. Not to contact her. I had said what I needed to say at the cemetery, but because I needed to know where she had gone, in the specific way you need to know where things have ended up after they have left your life. She had moved to Akron, her sister's city, a new start, close to family. I sat with that information and did nothing with it. I thought about her in Akron, starting over in the specific way that people start over when the version of themselves they had in one place is no longer available to them, when the place knows too much, when the geography of their daily life has become the geography of their exposure. She had lived in Millbrook for 11 years. She had left in 6 weeks. I had lived in Millbrook for 22 years. I was still there. This felt important to me, not as a statement, not as a performance of standing my ground, just true. I was still there. My roots had gone sideways and deep in the specific way of small-town roots, and those roots were mine, and a man's dishonesty and a neighbor's choices were not going to pull them up. I stayed. In March, 4 months after Dale died, the Millbrook Gazette ran a feature. Not about the obituary, not about me specifically, about the practice of honest obituaries, a trend the reporter had noticed nationally, in which surviving spouses or children had begun writing more truthful accounts of the people they had lost, refusing the traditional euphemisms that smooth over complicated lives. The reporter called me. I agreed to be interviewed. I said, "I have taught children to tell the truth for 22 years. It seemed inconsistent to stop now,
for my husband's sake, simply because he was no longer present to object. The piece ran nationally, picked up by 3 major publications. I received over the following weeks more than 200 letters and emails, most of them from women, many of them saying, in different words, in different specific circumstances, from different places, the same thing. Thank you for saying the true thing. I needed someone to say the true thing. I have been saying the expected thing for years, and I did not know I had permission to stop. I read every one. I answered as many as I could.
It has been 8 months. 8 months since 6:44 on a Thursday morning. 8 months since a phone on a nightstand and a message thread and a name I knew. I am still in the house on Elm Street. I have repainted the living room, a color Ray had suggested years ago that Dale had always vetoed, a warm terracotta. It looks, I think, exactly right. I have let the garden go wild in the back, which Dale never would have permitted. He liked things orderly. I have decided that I like things a little wild, that the specific, controlled neatness of 28 years of accommodating someone else's preferences is something I am putting down, along with the other things I am putting down. I go to church. Same church. Pastor Greg is still there. I sit in the same pew. What has changed is that I am no longer performing anything, not grief and not stoicism, and not the specific social presentation of a woman whose husband died and she is managing it appropriately. I am simply there. That is new. Ray asked me in one of our weekly calls whether I regretted the obituary. I thought about it honestly. No, I said, but I want to be precise about why not. I don't regret it because it felt good. It didn't, particularly. Writing it was not cathartic the way people seem to imagine. It was just work, the specific work of saying something true in a public space, when the easier thing would have been to say something expected. But you don't regret it, Ray said. No, I said. Because I have spent 28 years in a marriage that had a lie in it, and I did not know about the lie, and I cannot go back and know about it, and I cannot change what happened. What I could do was make sure that the end of that marriage, the part that went on public record, told the truth. That felt important to me. It still feels important. What about the headstone? Ray said. I thought about the headstone. The headstone, I said, was for me, not for the town, not for anyone else. For me. I needed something to stand in front of that said the true thing, so I put it there. His wife knew who he was. She buried him anyway. Yes, I said. I think that's the bravest thing you've ever written, she said.
I have thought a great deal about forgiveness, about what it means and doesn't mean, about whether writing an honest obituary and putting the truth on a stone is compatible with eventually forgiving someone. My conclusion, arrived at over 8 months of thinking about it, yes, honesty and forgiveness are not opposites. You can tell the truth about what someone did, and you can, eventually, release the weight of it. They are different acts. The first is about clarity. The second is about freedom. I have not forgiven Dale yet. I do not think I will for a long time, but I think I will eventually. Not because he deserves it. Forgiveness is not about desert. Not because what he did was acceptable. It was not. But because carrying the specific weight of 28 years of betrayal for the rest of my life is a heavier thing than I want to be carrying. I will put it down eventually. I just needed to say the true thing first. The stone will still say what it says. The obituary will still be in the archive. The forgiveness, when it comes, will be mine, private, unannounced, a thing I do for myself and not for the record. The record is already complete. Sandra's granddaughter came to see me last week. She is 9 years old, one of the kids I would have taught if I were still teaching.
She came with Sandra for a visit, and while Sandra and I had coffee, she looked at the bookshelf in my living room with the specific, absorbed attention of a 9-year-old who has decided a room is interesting. She found, on the bottom shelf, a photo album. She asked if she could look at it. I said yes. She sat on the floor and went through it, slowly, with the specific, careful attention of a child who takes pictures seriously. She stopped on a page near the middle. "Is this you?" she said. She was holding the album out to show me. A wedding photo. 25 years old. June in white, Dale in a rented tux, both of them laughing at something off camera. "Yes," I said. "You look happy," she said. I looked at the photo. I thought about that version of myself, 25 years old, laughing at something off camera, not knowing what the next 28 years held. "I was," I said. "That day I was." She looked at the photo for another moment. Then she turned the page. "You have a nice house," she said. "Thank you. I've lived here a long time." "Will you stay?" she asked. I thought about the terracotta walls, the wild garden, the stone in the cemetery with the true words on it, the 200 letters from women who needed someone to say the true thing. "Yes," I said. "I'll stay." She turned the page, and I drank my coffee. In my house, in Millbrook, Ohio. Still here.
That's the whole story, or the part I'm ready to tell. I want to say something about obituaries, about the specific, powerful, public act of writing down what is true about a person when they die. We have, as a culture, a tradition of smoothing these over, of saying he will be dearly missed when he will not be, of saying he lived a full life when the fullness of it was complicated, of performing one last time the version of a person they wanted to be seen as rather than the version they actually were. I do not think this serves anyone. I think it serves the performance, and I have spent enough of my life serving the performance. Dale Calloway was many things. He was an engineer who kept infrastructure working for 29 years. He was a father who showed up. He was a deacon who took his church seriously. He was also a man who looked his wife in the eye for 28 years while maintaining a relationship with their neighbor that he never once in 11 years had the courage to end or to disclose. All of those things are true. All of them went on the record, and I am not sorry. I have been a 4th grade teacher for 22 years. I have taught hundreds of children that telling the truth matters, that it is uncomfortable sometimes, that it costs sometimes, but that it is always, always the right thing. I was not going to stop believing that because my husband died. The stone is in the cemetery, the obituary is in the archive, the terracotta is on the walls, and I am still here, telling the truth. Same as always. Thanks for listening.